Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me once again. Yesterday at the end of my video, I asked you guys to give me a few subjects, and there was a couple of them that caught my eye and they tied together perfectly. Now, somebody asked me to go over a civil war in the United States and who would win this civil war. Now, the question you have to ask yourself in that situation, first and foremost, is who would be fighting who? And a lot of people would like to think it'd be the Democrats versus the Republicans. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think you're wrong if that's the assertion you want to make. We're going to leave that one right there for right now. Now, the second subject was basically asking me to discuss how at the end of World War II, the Third Reich didn't really fall. And that ties directly into the Civil War that somebody wants me to discuss as well. Now, the reason that it does is because you're 100% accurate in stating that the Third Reich never fell at the end of World War II. And if you really want my honest opinion about the end of World War II and how all of that was really engineered, it was engineered in order to ensure the ideology of the Nazi Party didn't die with the Nazi army. And that is exactly what happened. Now, it got to a point where it was inevitable that the Germans didn't have the military strength to sustain a war, let alone achieve victory. You couldn't even force a stalemate at this point, okay? Now, this goes against everything that they were originally trying to accomplish with the rise of the Third Reich. And the reason that this state was even reached is because Adolf Hitler went rogue. Now, Adolf Hitler invading Russia and trying to conquer the rest of the European Empire along with the Asian Empire and that whole region was never part of the original idea, okay? At some point, Hitler decided to go rogue because he realized that he was nothing more than a pawn for a greater plan. But the idea and the ideology that was adopted in order to push the German engineering machine, the German army, Nazism in general, was all conceived from very ancient practices and beliefs, rituals, etc., etc. Basically, what they did with the Nazi Empire is reinsert mythology, belief systems from older societies and cultures and religions, and they tied them all into one. And what they did in accomplishing this is they managed to take all that belief and all that fear and all that spiritual awakening that was happening in society and funnel it right to the very top of the structure, which is where they ended up getting a lot of their power from. If any of that interests you, go look into the Vril Society and these women that were communicating with entities that supposedly led to a lot of the technology that was developed by the Nazi Party. Look into the time-traveling bell, for example, that the Nazis supposedly developed. Now, set all of that aside for a second and realize that once they knew Hitler wasn't going to be able to win the war, they had to devise a way of taking that culture and inserting it into the rest of the world without actually conquering the world and letting people know that the Nazi ideology was being inserted into their cultures. Now, if you look at what happened after the war, you have to realize that a lot of these people that were supposedly guilty of some serious atrocities were taken, given new identities, and inserted into European society, reinserted into American society, reinserted into Russian society. Now, these people went from holding a position of power in one of the most evil empires ever, or so we're told, right? And then they go from holding that power right to another position of power inside of another government, carrying on all of their work just as though it never stopped. And in fact, they were probably better funded. So, what does this lead to? Well, this leads to the creation of the United Nations, right? And this is where it starts to tie into the Civil War in America. Because by now, the United Nations has inserted itself into every single economic and political policy inside of the United States, all while at the same time consolidating all of the power in Europe, right? All of the power in Europe has been consolidated into Brussels, okay? Not only has it been consolidated into Brussels, Angela Merkel managed to do this without firing a single bullet, without killing a single person in the eyes of the media, in the eyes of the people. She did all of this peacefully and diplomatically. Her father, Adolf Hitler, would be proud of her. A lot of people don't realize about Angela Merkel is that she was actually a member of the Hitler Youth. Okay, there is pictures of her in Hitler Youth uniforms. She went away to Hitler Youth camps. And if anybody takes a picture of her and overlays it with a picture of Adolf Hitler in his later years, the resemblance is absolutely uncanny. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there was somebody that actually used facial recognition algorithms to calculate the likelihood that those two are related, and the odds are sitting at over 80% that they are. But this isn't the only person inside of our political system today that has direct ties all the way back to World War II and the Nazi war machine and the political system and the ideology. Let's take a look at the Bush family for a minute. Now, the Bush family, as we all know, is tied directly to Skull and Bones, one of the most secret societies known to man. Now, let's just take symbology and transfer it over to the Nazi Party for a second and realize that the Skull and Bones is a direct descendant of the same exact symbology, if not derived from the same exact cult as Hitler's SS. If you look at their uniforms, they had a skull and bone right on their freaking forehead. Now, what these people do is they use symbology to tell you and I the truth. And the simple fact of the matter is, a lot of us don't even put these pieces together because we've been flooded with so much symbology from birth. We just think of it as it's there. We don't realize that it's telling us a story. But Bush goes back to the Prescott family. Now, the Prescott family ties directly back to the World War II, Hitler, Nazi war machine, Nazi political machine. And in fact, he also has direct ties to IBM, one of the greatest freaking corporations as far as computers are concerned in modern society. Few people know that IBM actually derived all of the mathematical tracking and engineering and algorithms in order to keep track of the Jewish population. That's what the tattoos on their arms were for. IBM devised all of that accounting software, all of that stuff, all of those processes and systems were devised and implemented by IBM. Bush family has direct ties to them. Henry Ford, huge anti-Semite, supposedly funded the Nazi war machine. Now, if you look throughout history and you look at all of these powerful families that were backing, the Carnegies did the same thing, Rothschilds did the same thing. They all had interest in Hitler and his war. They all wanted it to succeed until Hitler went rogue, okay? And that's when they had to devise a plan B. So, like I said, they launched Operation Paperclip and brought all of these people and inserted them into the modern day society. Now, brings us to modern day and to what's going on right now. Now, like I said, if you think it's going to be Republican and Democrat running the Civil War in America against each other, you're absolutely out of your mind, because it's going to have nothing to do with politics at the end of the day. And the reason I say this is because it has a lot to do with what's been coming out in the media day by day right now. If anybody thinks for a minute Epstein and his suicide isn't the biggest political scandal to ever hit the United States, you are out of your mind. Now, it's not because Epstein killed himself or who killed Epstein. It has nothing to do with that. Epstein dying is nothing more than a catalyst for the Great Awakening, okay? What do I mean by the Great Awakening? If you look at the majority of the population and you ask them if Epstein killed himself, the majority of people are going to say no, okay? Now, what do you see the media doing? The media is doing nothing but launching accusations that anybody who believes anything except the mainstream narrative is absolutely crazy, okay? And what's different about this is the majority of Americans don't believe the mainstream narrative for a change. Now, the reason that this is going to be bigger than anything that's ever rocked the United States is the fact that it implicates everybody in the upper echelons of government, Hollywood, power players in the financial world, kings, queens, royalty. Everyone, everywhere, all over the world is going to go down. And there is no turning a blind eye to this anymore. Far too many people are aware of what's going on. There's absolutely no way around it. People are going to have to wake up, and those that choose not to are going to be forced to. Because eventually, it's going to get to the point where people aren't mad at just one political party. They're not going to be just mad at Democrats. They're not going to be just mad at Republicans. Because you know what's going to happen is there's going to be videos that come out, okay? And the only way to get people to believe these videos is you're not going to be able to pop a video out of just Bill Clinton. Because you know what's going to happen if you do? Everybody except the Republicans are going to believe it, okay? You can't do just that. And the fact is that this has been going on for centuries, okay? The fact of the matter here is that pedophilia and the use of this has nothing to do with the sexual pleasure that's derived. Yes, that may be the catalyst that makes the person do it, but the algorithm behind it is feeding off of the fear, feeding off of the power, feeding off of the magic, feeding off of the belief. That is why this is used, because innocence in fear produces the absolute most energy to feed off of. It is not the act of sex in and of itself. It is the fact that power and energy can be derived from this sex, feeding that algorithm. Plain and simple, that is exactly what is going on. And the simple fact of the matter, like I said, is that this has been going on forever. Meaning, both sides of the coin are implicated in this. There is no political party that is safe. Now, what happens when there's videos of John McCain, there's videos of Bill Clinton, there's videos of frickin' George Clooney, every woman's wet dream? What happens when the fantasy of every middle-aged woman turns out to be molesting little girls? And there's video of it. Are you going to be able to turn a blind eye to it? And what is that going to create inside of every single person in America, in this world? What is that going to create? It's going to create disgust. It's going to create the realization that we've been voting and placing our faith and doing everything, feeding these people's addictions. Because at the end of the day, we gave them their power. We fed their bank accounts by going and watching these videos in Hollywood. We elected these people to office. We invested in their companies. We bought their TVs, etc., etc. We are all guilty. That's not how the human mind works. You got to understand, The average person like me and you doesn't have the capacity to carry something like this out. We don't have the power. We don't have the financial means. We may be guilty. We may have funded it. But at the end of the day, the next civil war isn't going to be between Republican and Democrat. It's going to be the average person like you and me tearing down the gates of the elite and ripping them from their seats of power. That is what the next civil war is going to be. And if you want to know who's going to win that one, it's going to be you and me. There's no way around it. And that's why you see damage control being done left and right. That's why you see all these freaking articles being pushed about deep fake videos. But it's actually the defeat of the Third Reich at the same time, because it never died. So the Civil War in America is far more than a Civil War in America, because if it breaks out here, if it breaks out after this information, if it breaks out now, it's not going to just hit the United States. It's going to hit everywhere. And I'm telling you right now, if the mainstream, if everybody all at the same time wakes up to the fact that these people have been doing this for the centuries and centuries and centuries that they have been, there's going to be holy fucking hell to pay. That's all I have to say for that. There's going to be holy hell to pay, and there's no way around it. And as fast as you see everybody waking up, it should concern you. Because there's no turning back now. Epstein dying, like I said, is just the catalyst for a lot more truth to come. Floodgates have been opened. This is bigger than Watergate, JFK, the moon landing. It's bigger than all of it combined, my friends. Thank you for the topic suggestions, guys. I'm making a BitChute today, so there'll be details about that later on. I'll drop a video on here informing you guys where you can find me over there. God bless you and your families, man. It's all you have.